They say you should never lie about who you are. But what if one lie could change your entire life? What if pretending to be someone else for just one evening could open doors you never knew existed? My name is Elena, and I'm about to tell you the story of how I went from cleaning toilets in a luxury condominium to sitting at tables I could never afford, all because of one borrowed dress, one mistaken identity, and one man who saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. But here's the thing about lies. They have a way of catching up with you. And when they do, everything comes crashing down. If you're ready to hear how far someone can fall when they build their life on a foundation of deception, then stay with me. But before we begin, if you enjoy these kinds of deep, raw stories told from the heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Let me paint you a picture of my life before everything changed. I'm 28 years old, and I work as a housekeeper at Grandview Estates, one of the most exclusive gated communities in California. We're talking $30 million mansions, private security, Teslas parked in every driveway like they're Honda Civics. The kind of place where people have wine cellars bigger than my entire apartment. My day starts at 5:30 a.m. I take 2 buses to get there because I can't afford a car. By 7 a.m., I'm in my gray uniform with my name tag, pushing my cleaning cart through marble hallways that echo with every step. The thing about being a maid in a place like this? You become invisible. People walk past you like you're furniture. They have entire conversations on their phones about business deals worth millions while you're scrubbing their bathtub, and they never once acknowledge that you're even there. I clean 6 houses a day. Mrs. Patterson in Villa 12 leaves passive-aggressive notes about spots I supposedly missed. Mr. Chun in Villa 7 is never home, but his teenage son leaves his room looking like a tornado hit it. And then there's Villa 23. Villa 23 belongs to Alexander Kane. Now, Alexander Kane is not just rich.
He's wealthy.
There's a difference. Rich people have money. Wealthy people have power, influence, connections that go all the way to the top. At 35, he's already a venture capitalist who's funded half the tech startups in Silicon Valley. His face has been on the cover of Forbes.
Twice.
The first time I saw him, I was cleaning the fountain in the central courtyard. It was around 8 p.m., and I'd stayed late because one of the other girls called in sick. I was exhausted, my back aching, when I heard footsteps behind me. "You're here late." I turned around, and there he was. Tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I make in 6 months. Dark hair, sharp jawline, and these intense gray eyes that seemed to look right through you. But what struck me most was that he actually saw me. Not through me.
Not past me.
He saw me. Yes, sir. Just finishing up, I said, keeping my eyes down like we're trained to do.
"Alexander," he said.
"You can call me Alexander. What's your name?" "Elena." "Well, Elena, don't work too hard. Everyone deserves to go home at a decent hour." And then he smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one. The kind that reaches your eyes. That was it. 20 seconds. But something about that interaction stayed with me for weeks. The problem was Alexander Kane was so far out of my league, we weren't even playing the same sport. I'd see him occasionally, when I was cleaning the common areas. Sometimes he'd nod. Sometimes he'd say hello. Once, he held the elevator door for me when I was carrying a heavy box of cleaning supplies. "Thank you, Mr. Kane," I said. "Alexander," he corrected, that smile appearing again. But that was the extent of it. He was kind, polite, but he lived in a completely different world. He dated supermodels and heiresses. I'd seen the photos in magazines. What would someone like him want with someone like me? My best friend Rosa, who also works at Grandview, used to tease me about him. "Elena, you get this dreamy look every time you mention him," she'd say during our lunch breaks. "I do not," I'd protest, but we both knew it was a lie. The truth was, I'd started to fantasize. Not even about dating him, really. Just about what it would be like to have a conversation with him as an equal. To sit across from him at a table and have him actually interested in what I had to say. To be seen not as the help, but as a person. But that was all it was. A fantasy. Until the night everything changed. It was a Friday evening in late September. The Grandview Estate's annual charity gala was being held in the main clubhouse. This was the biggest event of the year, where all the residents dressed up in tuxedos and evening gowns, drank champagne that cost more per bottle than my monthly rent, and wrote checks to various charities to feel good about themselves. My job, along with the other housekeeping staff, was to work the event. We'd be serving drinks, clearing tables, making sure the bathrooms stayed pristine. Basically, being invisible again while rich people pretended to care about the less fortunate. I'd worked these events before. They were exhausting, but the pay was good because they counted as overtime. Plus, sometimes the residents would tip generously if they'd had enough champagne. That evening, I arrived early to help with setup. The clubhouse looked like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, a string quartet warming up in the corner. I was in the back room with Rosa, both of us in our server uniforms, black and white, professional and forgettable. Another night of being furniture, Rosa sighed, adjusting her bow tie. At least we'll get overtime, I reminded her. That's when I heard voices coming from one of the storage rooms down the hall. Curious, I walked over and peeked inside. There were racks of clothes, beautiful dresses in every color imaginable, along with suits and accessories. What is all this? I whispered to Maria, one of the event coordinators rushing past. Oh, those are donated clothes from the residents, she explained quickly. Part of the charity auction later. Some of them are designer pieces, barely worn. We'll auction them off and the money goes to the women's shelter downtown. Designer dresses. Just sitting there. An idea started forming in my mind. A crazy, reckless, absolutely insane idea. What if I could be someone else for one night? I know what you're thinking. This is where the good girl makes a bad decision. And you're absolutely right. But let me tell you what was going through my head in that moment. I'd spent my entire life being invisible. I'd worked hard, played by the rules, stayed humble and grateful for what I had. And where had it gotten me? I was still taking 2 buses to clean toilets for people who didn't even know my name. Just once, I wanted to know what it felt like to be on the other side. To walk into a room and have people actually look at me. To matter. Rosa found me staring at the dresses. Elena, what are you doing? Rosa, I said slowly, what if we didn't work the event tonight? What if we attended it? Her eyes went wide. Are you insane? We'd get fired. Only if we get caught, I said, my heart pounding. Think about it. There are going to be over 200 people there. Half of them don't even know all the other residents. We could blend in. Just for a couple of hours. Then we'd change back, help with cleanup, and no one would ever know. Elena, this is crazy. I know.
You could lose your job.
I know. So, why would you even consider it? I looked at her, and I was honest. Because I want to feel like I'm worth something. Just for one night. Rosa stared at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. If we do this, we do it right. We need to pick dresses that aren't too flashy, nothing that will make us stand out too much. And we stay together. The second it feels like we're going to get caught, we leave.
Deal?
I couldn't believe she was actually agreeing.
Deal.
We spent the next 20 minutes selecting our disguises. Rosa chose an elegant navy dress, simple but sophisticated. I picked out a deep emerald green gown that hugged my figure in ways my uniform never had. It had a delicate beading along the neckline and flowed like water when I moved. In the staff bathroom, we transformed ourselves. Rosa was good with makeup. She'd worked at a department store beauty counter before Grandview. She did both our faces, nothing too dramatic, just enough to look polished and expensive. We pinned up our hair, borrowed some jewelry from the donation pile, just simple pieces, nothing too flashy. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I didn't look like Elena the maid. I looked like someone who belonged at a gala. Okay, Rosa breathed, looking nervous but excited. Let's do this before I change my mind. My hands were shaking as we walked toward the main ballroom. I kept expecting someone to stop us, to point and shout imposters. But no one did. The security guard at the door barely glanced at us before waving us through. And just like that, we were in. The ballroom was even more beautiful from this angle. As a server, you see these events from the periphery, always moving, always working. but as a guest, you could actually take it in. The music, the laughter, the way the chandeliers cast everything in a warm, golden glow. Rosa grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter, ironic, since we were supposed to be the ones serving, and handed me one. To being someone else for a night, she said. To being someone else, I echoed, and we clinked glasses. The champagne was delicious, crisp and bubbly, and probably worth more than my phone bill. I felt giddy, whether from the alcohol or the adrenaline, I couldn't tell. We mingled, carefully, smiled and nodded when people made small talk, pretended to be interested when someone droned on about their recent trip to Bali or their daughter's acceptance to Yale. It was easier than I thought it would be. These people were so self-absorbed, they barely asked us any questions. They just wanted an audience. I was starting to relax, starting to actually enjoy myself, when I heard a voice behind me. I don't think we've met. I turned around, and my breath caught in my throat. Alexander Kane was standing right there, looking impossibly handsome in a black tuxedo, holding a glass of whiskey, and looking directly at me with those intense gray eyes. I don't think we have, I managed, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. Alexander Kane, he said, extending his hand. I took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against mine. Elena. Just Elena? He asked, a slight smile playing at his lips. Just Elena, I confirmed. I couldn't give him my last name. What if he recognized it from the staff directory? Well, just Elena, I have to say, you're the most intriguing person I've seen here tonight. And I've been to a lot of these events.
Oh,
I said, trying to sound casual despite my racing heart. What makes me intriguing? Everyone here is either trying too hard to impress me, or they already assume they know everything about me based on what they've read in Forbes, he said, his tone slightly amused. But you look like you'd rather be anywhere else. And yet here you are. He'd read me perfectly. I felt exposed, but also seen in a way I hadn't expected. These events can be a bit much, I admitted carefully. That's an understatement, he said, then gestured toward the terrace. Would you like to get some air? It's quieter outside. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to say no, to make an excuse and disappear. But the part of me that had put on this dress, that had decided to live this fantasy for one night, whispered something different. I'd like that, I heard myself say. As we walked toward the terrace, I caught Rosa's eye across the room. She looked panicked, mouthing, "What are you doing?" I gave her a tiny shrug. I had no idea what I was doing. I was making it up as I went along. The terrace overlooked the golf course, and the night air was cool against my skin. The sounds of the party faded to a pleasant murmur behind us. It was just Alexander and me, standing under a sky full of stars. So, Elena, he said, leaning against the railing, tell me something real. Something you wouldn't tell anyone else at this party. The question caught me off guard. That's a dangerous request.
is it?
He asked, his eyes twinkling. I find that the most interesting conversations happen when people drop their masks. Oh, the irony. Here I was, wearing the biggest mask of my life, and he wanted authenticity. Okay, I said, deciding to be as honest as I could be without revealing my real identity. I think events like this are beautiful, but they're also a bit sad. All this money, all this effort, and at the end of the day, I'm not sure how much of it actually helps the people who need it. It feels like people want to help, but only from a safe distance. I held my breath, worried I'd said too much, been too critical. But Alexander didn't look offended. Instead, he nodded slowly. You're absolutely right, he said. I write a check, I feel good about myself, and then I go back to my comfortable life without actually changing anything. It's performative charity. I didn't mean... No, you're right to call it out, he interrupted. Most people here wouldn't. They'd just smile and tell me how wonderful it is that we're all giving back. That's why I find you interesting. You say what you actually think. We talked for what must have been an hour. About everything and nothing. He told me about the pressure of living up to expectations, how every decision he made was scrutinized, how sometimes he felt more like a brand than a person. I told him about the importance of hard work, about dreams deferred, about finding beauty in small moments, all truths from my real life, carefully edited to fit my borrowed identity. You're different from other women I've met, he said at one point.
How so?
You're not trying to impress me. You're not dropping names or talking about your trust fund or your latest trip to Paris. You're just present. Do you know how rare that is? I laughed, but it came out slightly bitter. Maybe I'm different because I'm not from your world. What world are you from? He asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. This was dangerous territory. A simpler one, where things matter because of what they are, not what they cost. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I'd like to see that world. You wouldn't like it, I said softly. Not really. It's not romantic or adventurous.
It's just ordinary.
Maybe ordinary is underrated, he said, and there was something in his voice, a loneliness that I recognized because I felt it too. The night continued like a dream. We went back inside, and he introduced me to people as if I belonged there. A senator, a tech CEO, a famous actress whose movies I'd watched on my laptop. And for those few hours, I did belong. I laughed at jokes, contributed to conversations, and no one questioned my presence. Alexander never left my side. He touched my elbow gently when guiding me through the crowd, leaning close when the music got loud. Look at me like I was the only person in the room. Dance with me, he said when the string quartet started playing something slow and beautiful. I'm not a very good dancer, I admitted. Good thing I am, he said with that smile, taking my hand and leading me to the dance floor. His hand was warm on my waist, and I could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. We moved together, and it felt natural, easy, like we'd done this 1,000 times before. Elena, he said, his voice close to my ear, I know this might sound crazy, but I feel like I've been waiting to meet you. Like every boring conversation, every pointless event, was just leading me to this moment. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could feel it. Alexander, I want to see you again, he said, pulling back slightly to look into my eyes. Tomorrow, let me take you to dinner. Somewhere quiet where we can actually talk. This was it. The moment where the fantasy had to end. I couldn't see him again. I couldn't keep up this lie. But looking into his eyes, feeling his arms around me, I couldn't bring myself to say no. Tomorrow, I heard myself agree. But somewhere casual. I'm not really a fancy restaurant person. He laughed. You're full of surprises. I know a place. Small Italian restaurant, family-owned, best pasta you've ever had. Give me your number. Panic flashed through me. I couldn't give him my real number. What if he tried to look me up? I don't have my phone with me, I said quickly. Why don't you give me yours, and I'll text you? He rattled off his number, and I pretended to memorize it, knowing I'd never use it. This had to end here. It had to. But then he said, or better yet, meet me here. At the fountain in the courtyard. 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. That way, you can't stand me up. The fountain. Where we'd first spoken, back when I was just the invisible maid. The irony was almost poetic. Okay, I whispered. The fountain. 7 o'clock. He smiled, and for a moment, I let myself pretend that this could be real. That I could be the woman in the green dress who belonged in his world. The evening wound down. Rosa found me near midnight, her eyes urgent. We need to go.
Now.
Before people start leaving and someone recognizes us. She was right. The fantasy had to end. I found Alexander talking to a group of investors. When he saw me approaching, he excused himself immediately. Leaving already? He asked, looking disappointed. It's late, I said. And I have an early morning. Tomorrow, he reminded me. Don't forget. I won't, I lied. He leaned in and kissed my cheek, a gentle brush of lips that sent electricity through my entire body.
Good night, Elena.
Thank you for making this bearable. Rosa and I slipped away, changed back into our uniforms in the bathroom, and joined the cleanup crew as if we'd been there all along. No one suspected a thing. But as I rode the bus home at 2 a.m., exhausted and still feeling the ghost of Alexander's kiss on my cheek, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. I'd tasted something I could never have, and it was going to destroy me. I didn't show up at the fountain. Of course I didn't. What was I supposed to do? Show up in my uniform and say, surprise. Remember me? I'm actually your maid? The whole thing was impossible. But not showing up didn't make it easier. For 3 days, I avoided Villa 23 like the plague. I traded assignments with other girls, took lunch breaks at different times, anything to avoid running into Alexander. Rosa thought I was being dramatic. "So you had one magical night," she said over lunch on Tuesday. "It was fun, but it's over.
Move on."
I can't, I admitted. "Rosa, I can't stop thinking about him. And not just because he's handsome or rich. He was kind. He was interested in what I had to say. He made me feel like I mattered." "You do matter," Rosa said firmly. "But Elena, he doesn't know the real you. He knows the fantasy version. The woman in the dress." "I know," I said miserably. "I know that." But knowing didn't help. Every time I cleaned a house, I'd find myself wondering what it would be like to live there. Every time I saw a happy couple walking through the grounds, I'd imagine it was Alexander and me. I was stuck in a fantasy that I'd created and couldn't escape from. Then, on Thursday, everything changed. I was cleaning the windows in the main lobby when I heard his voice. "Excuse me." I turned and there he was, Alexander Kane, looking at me with those intense gray eyes. My heart stopped. "Yes, sir?" I said automatically, my voice professional, distant. He stepped closer, studying my face. "Have we met before?" "I clean Villa 23 on Tuesdays and Fridays, sir," I said, looking down at my cleaning supplies.
"No, I mean..."
He paused, and I could feel him trying to place me. "You look familiar. Your eyes." This was it. He was going to recognize me. My life was over. But then Mrs. Patterson walked by, calling out to him about some resident committee meeting, and the moment passed. Alexander gave me one more curious look before walking away. I stood there, trembling, feeling like I'd just dodged a bullet. That's when I made my decision. I couldn't live like this, caught between two worlds, invisible in one and a liar in the other. Something had to change. That evening, I did something crazy. I went to Villa 23. I knocked on the door, still in my uniform, my heart hammering. When Alexander answered, he looked surprised. "Elena?" he said, and then caught himself. "I'm sorry, I don't actually know your name." "The maid who cleans my house." "It's Elena," I said quietly. "And I need to talk to you." "May I come in?" He looked confused but stepped aside. Of course. His living room was immaculate, mostly because I'd cleaned it the day before. I stood there, awkward in my gray uniform, so out of place in this beautiful space. "Mr. Kane." "Alexander," he corrected automatically. "Alexander," I started, then stopped. How do you explain something like this? "I owe you an apology. And an explanation. The woman you met at the gala Friday night, that was me." He stared at me, processing. I watched as recognition dawned in his eyes. "The green dress," he said slowly. "That was you."
"Yes."
"You didn't show up at the fountain."
"No." "Why?"
And there it was. The moment of truth. "Because I'm not who you thought I was," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I'm not a resident here. I'm not wealthy or connected or sophisticated. I'm exactly what you see right now. A maid who put on a borrowed dress and pretended to be someone else for one night." The silence that followed was devastating. "Why would you do that?" he finally asked, and I couldn't read his tone. Angry?
Disappointed?
Hurt. Because I wanted to know what it felt like, I admitted.
To be seen.
To matter. To have someone like you look at me like I was worth your time. I know it was wrong. I know I lied to you.
And I'm sorry.
I'll request a transfer, so you don't have to see me again. I needed you to know the truth. I turned to leave, tears burning in my eyes, when he spoke. "Elena, wait." I stopped but didn't turn around. "That night," he said, "the woman I talked to on the terrace, the one who challenged me and made me laugh and made me feel less alone, that was real, wasn't it? Those conversations, those thoughts you shared, that was really you?" "Yes," I whispered. "Then that's all that matters." I turned around, shocked.
"What?"
He crossed the room, standing in front of me. "I don't care about the dress. I don't care about where you live or what you do for a living. The woman I met Friday night was real. You are real. Everything else is just details." "Alexander, you can't mean that." We're from completely different worlds. Maybe that's exactly what I need, he said softly. Someone who sees me, not my bank account or my connections. Someone who's honest and kind and doesn't take any of this too seriously. People will talk, I said. Your friends, your colleagues, everyone will judge you. Let them, he said simply. I've spent my entire life living up to other people's expectations. Maybe it's time I lived for myself. And then he smiled, that real smile that reached his eyes, and I felt something break open inside my chest. So, he said, how about that dinner? There's still that Italian place I mentioned. Best pasta you've ever had. I laughed, and it came out half-sob. I'd like that. Good. Tomorrow night. And Elena? Come as yourself. I prefer you without the mask. That was 6 months ago. I won't lie and tell you it's been easy. There were complications. His friends didn't understand. My coworkers thought I was crazy. There were articles and gossip blogs about the billionaire and the maid, most of them cruel, some of them creative fiction. But Alexander never wavered. He introduced me to his world, yes, but he also stepped into mine. He learned that happiness doesn't require a price tag, that meaningful connections are built on honesty, not pretense. I'm still working at Grandview Estates. Alexander wanted me to quit, but I refused. This job, as unglamorous as it is, taught me the value of hard work and dignity. And funny enough, the residents treat me differently now. Not because I'm dating Alexander, but because they finally see me. Sometimes it just takes one person believing you matter before others start to notice. Did I mention that Alexander proposed last month? He did it at the fountain where we first spoke, when I was just the invisible maid, and he was just another resident. Full circle. So what's the lesson here? I'm not going to tell you that lying is okay, because it's not. That night at the gala started with deception, and I'm lucky it didn't end in disaster. But I will tell you this. Sometimes we wear masks because we don't think the world is ready for who we really are. Sometimes we diminish ourselves because we've been taught that we don't belong in certain rooms, at certain tables, in certain lives. The truth is, you belong anywhere you have the courage to show up as yourself. Not some borrowed version. Not some fantasy. Just you. Alexander didn't fall in love with the woman in the green dress. He fell in love with the woman underneath. The one who worked hard, spoke her mind, and dared to hope for something more. And maybe that's the real fairy tale. Not finding a prince to save you, but finding someone who sees you, the real you, and loves you anyway. Thanks for staying with me through this story. If you enjoyed hearing about how one crazy decision changed my entire life, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're enough exactly as they are. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever pretended to be someone you're not? What happened? I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your story too. Until next time, remember, the best version of you is always the real version. This is Elena, signing off.